Hello, and today I'm going to talk about the idea of mongrel, being a mongrel versus pedigree. So a mongrel is someone like me who has, and obviously firstly let's just lose the potential problematicness of these words and think about it in a playful way, that there are some people who are pedigrees who are very whatever and pure, and they make a certain type of work in a certain medium, and they can therefore have a static, interesting, focused brand and niche, and exist within a particular sphere or subset of the commercial creative world. And then there's people who are mongrels who, like me, might work across a million different media, visual arts, video, music, publishing and literature in some way, teaching, broader creative practice, and essentially it's just I make everything. I'm an artist. I don't fit in a literary world, I don't fit in the music scene, I don't fit in any of the million art worlds there are, even though there's lots. And yeah, I think it's just an interesting idea that those who are pedigree are more able to hone down, niche down, and create, I guess, a foundation of maybe commercial success or professional renown, because they can be known for doing the thing that they do. So if that's doing paintings, if that's writing poetry, obviously writing poetry is probably not going to be that profitable, but if you can decide I do one thing, I'm an expert in this. It's a little bit like the difference between being a generalist and an expert. But yeah, this idea comes from an essay it was a review actually by one of my former tutors called John Beagles, and it was about this idea of artistic pedigree-ness and mongrelness, and a lot of it comes from this idea that it's actually more interesting and cool to be dynamic and shifting as an artist. Obviously it might be more interesting, and it might be more interesting to other artists and researchers who are engaging with that person's work, but on a commercial level and on a professional level, it's much harder to exist within one domain with one area and build a network of people who are also mongrels, which is also possible, but it's a little bit harder to define and establish what that is. It's a little bit harder to create, let's say, merch or products or artworks, and it's a little bit more loose. And I guess it's probably likely that the mongrel approach is more research focused and I'm just doing my thing, I'm experimenting, I'm exploring, and any kind of finished artwork that's presented in wherever it's presented, whether that's this year I'm going to make a book, this year I'm going to do an album, this year whatever, is almost like an afterthought, or it's driven by the work. And this also relates to the idea of intermedia, which is something that I studied. My BA was in intermedia, so it came from this ideology that there are certain artists that will just basically employ whatever media or technique that they need in order to convey a message that's specific to that vibe. So it's from Statement on Intermedia by Dick Higgins, which was written in the 60s at a time of lots of dynamic, interdisciplinary, porous, leaky edges of, let's say, painting, sculpture, performance. Traditional media was all blurring, and people were able to, say in the Fluxus movement, for example, in the performance arts scene and in happenings, people started blurring the edges of what a painting was, what a sculpture was, and even then things like video and the expanded digital media became much more anyone can do everything. And a lot of that intent was originally about breaking free from art being a static commercial commodity thing. So in a way it might have been anti-painting, anti-exclusiveness, and I guess where we are now, it's almost like the term mongrel and the idea of being a mongrel also relates to the gig economy, and artists today and creative people today having to have a million strings to their bow in order to offer different skills and services in order to thrive and have like a portfolio career, which is increasingly competitive and hard and unreliable and precarious, but also might be kind of the opposite of like the traditional thing of, yeah, just having a straight up studio practice or having like a job in publishing or the music industry or something. Everything's a bit more dynamic. So it's a little bit like the idea of anyway, I'm not gonna talk more about whatever I was going to talk about, which is stuff about I don't know, singularity and postmodernism and atomization, because that's going to in abstract and whatever. But essentially, whoever you are, whatever you are, you can't necessarily shoehorn yourself into something. And I actually think that I'm actually really curious to see whether there is a thing in human design. If anyone knows their human design and their pedigree, if they have a defined G or a defined ego, I would love to hear, because I have a theory about this. And I have a theory that I have an open or an undefined G and an undefined ego. And I feel like that explains why I can't just do one thing. Yeah, so I'd love to hear if that's you. If you don't know what that means, I'll post a link below. But yeah, otherwise, permission to be a mongrel or pedigree, as is your nature, permission to attempt to be the other, and permission to read more about it below, because I think it's super interesting, and yeah, it's a very big question of the day in terms of people with their creative voice. Thank you for watching.